Greetings and welcome to Abstract Essay, where we deal about everything under the sun. And today I have my special guest. He is a founder, entrepreneur, visionary, as well as an author too, and the author of the upcoming book. Before we forget, no other than Mr. Aaron Scott.
Hello, Daniel. How are you?
Welcome. I'm fabulous, fabulous, Mr. Aaron, and welcome on Abstract Essay. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
I guess I'd like to kind of focus on my upcoming book. If you wanted me to talk about myself, I could talk to it for a few hours here. But I've had quite a journey in in my professional life, in my personal life, and I think that's kind of what I think you'll hear this a lot. But that's kind of what it's all about, really, is to experience and to learn and to grow and things like that. And I've been working on this book for what seems like, I don't know, in many ways a lifetime, but it's really the accumulation of just kind of massive amounts of knowledge that I've acquired over the years. And you know I think many of us kind of sense this and they see it, this whole idea of awakening. And I think that people, even though they can kind of sense it, they kind of understand what's going on. There are these kind of massive revelations of truth and exposes into corruption and the ways that power structures exist in the world around us. I think that there is a kind of a deeper story here that I try to address with a lot of these kind of unseen forces, and um, a lot of the kind of truths about basically human existence that have been obscured or kind of brushed to the wayside for a number of different reasons. So that's what this book is really about. It's about giving people a tangible grasp on information, on truths, on perspective that will hopefully um, you know add value and help people and societies evolve consciously.
Mr. Aaron Scott, thank you so much for
You
sharing
bet.
your knowledge and wisdom to the world. The title, Before We Forget, suggests we are in a precarious moment of collective amnesia. What is the most essential thing we, as civilization, are one of the verge of forgetting, and what is the consequence of the final forgetting?
Well, look, I think that when we kind of just breach this topic of just kind of like existence, if you will, right? This kind of like existential question. I think that it's kind of a big shock to people. But I also think that um, people are very much in tune with the gravity of the question. And everybody individually, they kind of get up and they go through the motions every day. They think that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing and it's the only way to do things. But in truth, nobody really ever questions anything. They're kind of just operating as machines, robots. They're following a program. Um, who who scripted this program? Who decided that this was the way that Daniel's supposed to live his life? Joe's supposed to live his life. Maria's supposed to live her life. Whoever it is, right? So um, it's about giving people a greater perspective on who they are individually and on who we are as a human race. um, and we have in many ways on a collective scale forgotten who we are, and it's been obscured across centuries, across millennia, by various power structures, from religious organizations to modern day institutions that kind of keep the collective consciousness suppressed and allow the mechanisms of control, or even just the mechanisms of economy, of hierarchy, of really kind of like the infrastructure of society, to continue operating efficiently. What happens is, when you have institutions and you have systems, corporations, etc., placed kind of at the top of the pyramid, the rest of humanity just gets kind of pushed to the side. It's a secondary thought, right? Um, Even people that are elevated in society that are considered elite, for example, they are still, in truth, um, subordinate to the institution, to the structure, to the corporation. It's the institution, it's the external entity, if you will, that is most important, right? Because it's that institution, it's that entity that sustains the mechanisms of control, that sustains the hierarchy, that allows the machine to operate as it does. So this is about giving people a proper understanding of themselves, of their spiritual um, kind of paradoxical nature of many kind of truths that people are blinded from, and blinded to by a lot of the illusions that we kind of all uh, grapple with on a daily basis.
Mr. Aaron, you identify the illusion of separation as a root cause. How would this illusion move from philosophical or spiritual concept into the concrete operational bedrock of our modern system like economics, education, and governance?
Yeah, well, look, the illusion of separation is probably one of the most pervasive illusions that exists in the modern era. I think that a misnomer or a misunderstanding is that this illusion of separation is this kind of esoteric, abstract idea that people cling to because it makes you feel good when you say it. This is not the truth. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The illusion of separation and our interbeing, our interconnectedness is so present everywhere. Yet it's been kind of obscured. We've been kind of blinded by it, and there are kind of like the way that we live our lives is really what perpetuates this illusion to persist. Uh, let's talk. We can talk about this on a individual basis, but uh, for example, human beings are all interconnected. We operate on a relational basis. We have things called mirror neurons in our brains that allow us to literally, when somebody smiles, we literally experience that emotional resonance in ourselves. When we are grieving, we're going through something, we grieve better when we are with somebody, when we are sharing that feeling with somebody, when somebody can provide us with their comfort, their presence, their groundedness, we heal faster. In nature, very simply, we breathe in oxygen and expel carbon dioxide. Trees do the opposite. There are, living ecosystems that are dependent upon one another. Trees, for example, have mycorrhizal fungi underneath the soil that keep the tree family from living and not dying. A stronger tree will send nutrients to a sapling or to a tree that's in need to keep the overall family strong and thriving. And on a human basis, again, we are composed of millions of in our microbiome. We are composed of we are comprised of millions of microbes. These microbes are literally the constitution of everything, from like our cognitive processes to our emotions to the way that we digest food. It's the bedrock of our actual existence, of our experience. Yet these facts, these truths are obscured. They're not even discussed. They're not looked at. So I can keep going, but we can go into modern physics, quantum physics, and we are finding that consciousness is the foundational, fundamental nature of the universe. It's not matter that as it was once thought to be. So there's all these different data points, and I go into this in the book, um, showing that we are in truth really connected. We are all part of the same ecosystem, many ecosystems. And when you begin to accept that truth, and this isn't an abstract concept, this is a fact, right? When you begin to accept that fact, all of these ideas of my pain is not yours goes away. All of these ideas of this problem happening there is not mine, that they go away. Why? Because when you dig deeper, when you look beneath the surface, our my pain is yours. When we see what's going on in Gaza, for example, that pain resonates with each one of us, right? A famine somewhere, a flood somewhere, by us experiencing it, we are impacted by it. So, in truth, when we are brought back into this reality, think about the mindset that would shift. Think about the mindset that on a global scale that would change, and this would really, this to me, in my belief, what really ruptures the power structures that depend on delineation, that depend on disconnection, that depend on forcing ideas like patriotism, nation states. I mean, these are all abstract concepts, but the structures of power depend on them to thrive, depend on them to maintain their supremacy. So that hopefully gives you a good idea of how this illusion of separation really exists in a very practical form.
Practical form indeed. So, Mr. Aaron, on integration and awaken coherence. You use integration as a key goal beyond just collaboration or cooperation. Can you give us a concrete example of what integrated action looks like in a community or organizations compared to a traditional separated approach?
Yeah, sure. So, integration for me is really about, again, we talk about this movement of awakening, this evolution of consciousness, and it's about taking this kind of newfound understanding of who you are, of what you believe in, of what your truths are, of your new kind of eureka moments, if you will, your revelations, and it's about applying them into your daily life. It's not just about coming to these realizations and saying, oh, this is great. I've now discovered that the government has done this, or I've now discovered that corporations are doing this, and I've discovered that there is corruption here, and then kind of like sitting back and go about your daily life. It's about coming to these realizations and then changing the way you live your life. It's about saying, okay, look, if I know that the medical system has been structured this way, that it's really trying to create long-lasting revenue streams to treat to treat symptoms, never cure anything. It's about looking to holistic approaches, looking at other ways of actually finding cures. It's about not supporting companies that utilize sweatshops in Bangladesh. It's about integrating these newfound truths into your daily life, and this extends past kind of like typical practical things like buying something or going somewhere. It's also about how you show up in the world. It's about not allowing your ego to drive you. It's about allowing a place of presence, a place of balance, a place of alignment internally to be the guiding force for your day-to-day life. How you treat a waiter at a restaurant, how you treat your annoying cousin at a family dinner. I mean, whatever it might be, right? And I go into the book, I go into really what that looks like and what integration can do to on a real world practical level, day-to-day level, uh, to improve your life, and the different steps that you can take to kind of get to that higher level of consciousness.
What does leading from a place of awakened coherence look like on a Tuesday afternoon in a boardroom or a community meeting? How does it change the nature of decision making?
Well, awakened coherence to me is about really embodying presence and letting yourself be guided by kind of like something deeper again than reaction, judgment, ego. Oftentimes you'll and I'm sure that you experience. I certainly am aware of it with myself. Oftentimes you'll be in a conversation with somebody, and you're kind of going through the motions of the conversation. You're reacting, you're judging, you are not allowing the conversation to take place in its natural form. You're creating barriers in many ways to allowing for someone to be fully present in themselves, you receiving that energy from them, and then kind of like responding to them uh, from a place of presence, from a place of coherence, not out of a place, not from a place of reactionary habit. Uh, what you'll find is that most people uh, typically will respond out of reaction, habit, and ego. They don't allow themselves to fully absorb what's being given to them. They don't allow themselves to fully appreciate what's being told to them, what's being expressed to them, and allow it to really resonate with them. And awakened coherence is being aware of the sacred relationship between you and somebody else involved in a conversation. It's about respecting that other person. It's about making space for that other person, and again, not reacting kind of like a robot, or like a I don't know, like a lower kind of evolved species that doesn't fully understand the dynamic involved between two people in a conversation. So that's really kind of what it's about, and it can extend across the board, from a meeting in a company to a conversation with a loved one. It really transcends planes.
Mr. Aaron, as a founder, entrepreneur, author, and visionary, what are your short term and long term goals?
My short term and long term goals are to um, really work to bring a kind of heightened level of awareness and an evolved consciousness to the world. I think that we are way overdue. I think the suffering in this world exists because people are sleepwalking. I think that people don't understand the power that they possess. I think that people are being taken advantage of. And I think that in order for us to improve our lives individually, and then obviously the world around us, we must take these kind of steps. The irony is that oftentimes you hear cliches like we must take these steps, and it's kind of like, oh, I might just go through this. It's an arduous process. It's painful. It will take up energy. In truth, it leads to a far better way of life, a far better way of being. But people are very kind of conditioned to um, stay in what they're used to. Comfort oftentimes is not always the most beneficial. It could be negative comfort, and kind of experiencing and being happy with the pain that they're experiencing. In truth, there's a better way to go about your daily life, and it's really through awareness, through consciousness, and accepting that a lot of these spiritual ideas, a lot of these ideas about coherence, presence, they need to be incorporated into the mainstream way of life. It's to not live that way in many ways is to accept a sort of sleepwalking approach to your reality, and it's just not cool anymore. It's not the way forward.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Aaron, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a founder, entrepreneur, and author, as well as a visionary?
My advice is really simple. My advice is to follow your passion, to follow what really motivates you and what drives you. One of the biggest kind of traps that I think people fall into, especially younger people, when they look around, everyone's kind of on a daily basis. They're looking around, they're trying to figure out how things work, how to excel in their life, how to, kind of live their life in the most, with the most fulfillment and things of that nature. Um, the biggest trick is to not get sucked into these kind of external ideas of success, these external ideas of gratification. If you live your life, if you're going through your life, you're going to a job every day and you're making a lot of money, but you're doing something that is fragmenting you, that is making you miserable, that is not bringing you joy. This is not the optimal life. This is the old school way of success, of finding success. This is a deception. It's about doing something that working or finding a job that you actually enjoy. There is no amount of money that will give you the pleasure that you will get from doing something that you actually enjoy. In truth, that's the life hack. That's the trick. It's to find somewhere, um, be something that satiates you on a real fundamental level, and that's how you really embrace, in my opinion, the gift of life right there.
The gift of life. And thank you for that, Mr. Aaron, for that advice. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Ooh, a book or books. Um, there's so many. I to go a little bit deep here, I would recommend the Upanishads, which is one of the first Hindu texts written. It's a of the Vedic guild, if you will. Um, I would it kind of I have a kind of wide range. I would look at the book by um, Howard Zinn. I think it's like I forget the name of it. Um, I just read this past summer. A People's History of the United States. It's a really good book. Um, those are two books that I would read. And to me, I like to find books that open my kind of eyes, give new perspective, new understanding about a lot of kind of common things, day to day things that I didn't really understand, I think, fully, and that will allow me to um, improve the way that I live my life on a day to day basis. Those two books really impacted me.
Thank you for that recommended books, Mr. Aaron. And what would you say to hardened skeptic who views terms like collective consciousness as a new age fluff and argues that human nature is inherently selfish and that systems barely reflect that?
I would tell a person that they are operating under illusions and a fundamental misunderstanding of not only human consciousness but of the way the world works. Collective consciousness is maybe it's too fancy of a word for that person to grasp or understand, but it's about the way people en masse look at things and live their life. So collective consciousness presently, on a majority basis, there are people walking around that think that God exists in some other realm, that they must look at themselves as beneath this deity that exists in some external realm. They must bow down to this being, and they must look at themselves as inferior. This is a collective consciousness understanding. There are many other things that collectively people embody consciously on a day-to-day basis. Collective consciousness presently incorporates people thinking that the way that life is, the way that economy is structured, that going to work every day and grinding it out to make money is just the way it is. That's the nature of society. That's the nature of the world. This is not true. This is the way that society has been structured, and it's been structured for a conscious reason. Whether they want to partake in that structure is up to them. And by the way, if collectively people decide that's not the way that they want to have society structured, they can change that. It's the power exists in the people, right? Um, so the collective consciousness is about the way that most people, the way that societies, countries walk around and view their life, view their own experience, view their own existence. The What was the other question about New Age something or
System merely reflect that. A new age fluff.
no? No, you said something else. Not about collective consciousness. About.
Hardened skeptic who views terms like collective consciousness.
And then what was after that?
A new age of love that argues human nature
Oh, right, human
is
nature. Right, right. So this is actually a funny one. So this idea that like this is idea that I talk about this in my book. This lie that the human nature is a savage nature, right? This is like the biggest scam ever. If you look at indigenous cultures, before the colonial takeover of America, for example, or even around the world, really. If you look at Christopher Columbus wrote in his journals, he showed up and met these people, and they grabbed his spear and they cut themselves. They had no idea what a weapon was. They were the most docile, peaceful, passive people. They welcomed him into their homes, and he said something like, "Oh, with 50 men, we could conquer this entire region." What happens is you have systems that you have systems like capitalism that create a need to be ruthless, a need to allow ideas like the end justifies the means, the values like survival of the fittest, or ideas about ideas like survival of the fittest, valuing things like accumulation, like extraction, right? So when that's the paradigm through which you must look at the world, you must look at yourself. When your entire life you are structuring your reality around the idea of scarcity. When you must go out into the world and you view yourself as, the measure, you measure yourself based on the utility that you can bring in, the amount of money that you can make, right? These are all constructs that you use to shape your identity, that the world uses to shape how, kind of like, the engine will push forward. Well, what does that breed? What does that create? It creates a savage nature. It creates a reality where people don't have enough, they must survive, where people are led by greed, where people are taken advantage of. And so it's kind of like, it's interesting where the power structure creates a society that uh, creates a savage nature, and then they say that, oh, human beings are by nature savage. But in truth, if you look at anything from, um, uh, what are some of these fields? You look at, studies in ecology, studies in, you know brain physiology, or it's not brain physiology, it's, I forget what the fields are, but if you look, again, it's about how we as human beings are kind of like vessels. We are open vessels. We can either be savage, we can either be nurturing. It's about what we put into the vessel. It's about, if we allow people to have what they need, if we give people the right vantage point to look at their life and the world around them, then they're not going to be savage, they're not going to attack and take over. But if you create an environment that forces that vantage point, that fosters that perception, well, what do you think? What do you think you're going to get? You're going to get the crime rates. You're going to get people attacking one another. You're going to get this survival mentality. So again, that idea of the human savage is a complete, well documented lie. It's not based on anything real.
Mr. Aaron, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast, law 101 in mental health 101 love letters in third season, and movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Aaron, before we forget, it feels like a beginning. What question has the writing of this book opened up for you that feels like the next frontier of this exploration?
The What this really opened up for me is, it's about, how to get people to realize that they have more power than they kind of think they do, and it's about giving people, um, the understanding that, again, I touched on this briefly, that, like, the economic systems that people think that they're chained to, they're not chained to. The medical system that they think that they're chained to, they're not chained to. The education system that they think that they're chained to, they're not chained to. Right? Like, you don't have to, um, submit to an economic model that does not care about you. That, you don't have to, uh, sit back and just say that's how it is. You can it's about, creating spaces with people, like-minded people. It's about, um, finding solutions that nourish you, and to look at, you know different ways that you can thrive in society. This life is not about getting by and surviving. Once you get out of high school, your life ends and you're just in servitude for the rest of your life. I mean, this is the reality for most people, and it doesn't have to be that way. It's about getting creative. It's about showing people, for me, this is the next step. It's about showing people, the different ways that they can create parallel structures that coexist in this society, economic structures, education structures, health structures that give them what they're looking for. And that's, I think, the next kind of step in this evolutionary process.
Mr. Aaron Scott, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your upcoming book before we forget? Mr. Aaron?
Sorry, you cut out there. What'd you say?
Yeah, can you please invite our listeners to support your book?
Absolutely. How would you like me to invite them, Daniel?
Please, where do you gonna buy for it or when it will be
Yeah. So
published?
sure. So it's coming out. It's the global distribution is taking place on October 14th. It will be on Amazon. It will be at. It will be really. I think it's going to be across all English-speaking countries in major bookstores, from Target to Walmart to Barnes and Nobles, Borders. But the primary distribution, I think, is going to be on Amazon, and there'll be an audiobook coming out as well. I think 2 weeks after the release on October 14th.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Aaron Scott because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Mr. Aaron, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Daniel.
Moticon people, see you soon.